Have you ever met someone and right away you knew you either really liked that person or really didn't like that person, but you really didn't know why? Well, and the same thing goes with a speech. Have you ever been in a speech and wondered who the speaker's talking to because it doesn't seem like that speaker was talking to you and no one was listening? These are signs of poor relations. And when we talk about audience relations, we want to prepare ahead of time to relate to and work with your audience. And that's what we're going to talk about in this session, is building audience relations, because it happens well before you start your speech. And let's jump on into it, because this is going to be an important part of the impact that you make on your audience as you go forward. So, like usual, give me your email address so I can just send this what you input to you. And we are on Impact Your Audience, working on Impact Your Audience, and we're looking at relations, audience relations right now. Go ahead and input your name, but if you don't want anybody to see your name, use an alias. We're looking at audience relations. So how can you build audience relations? Well, this happens well before you start speaking, and also while you are speaking. It means adapting before and adapting during the speech. And you adapt before by learning about your audience and listeners, and you adapt during by watching and listening. Okay? And in these exercises that you're going to be doing over the next few days, you will practice doing some of these things with the people around you, so they're not that foreign. But what we want is for you to be good at identifying and adapting to situations. Okay, so first thing is you are in and talking and communicating because you want to have someone pay attention to you. Okay, your first rule of adapting to an audience is to focus on getting them to pay attention, and you're persuading them to do that. And so what is most important about that is you want to know they're with them, or what's in it for me, as we say in the seminar world. These are their most important interests. Generally, these fit the motives of finance, freedom, love, caring, those general motives, and we'll talk more about those later. But the main thing is you want to be audience-centered, okay? Because success with a speech is to get the audience to know, believe, or do something different. And that would be success, so you want to get ready. Adapt before you speak, as I said before. That means research your audience, know the demographics and the situation, okay? And while you're speaking, really listen, watch. If you say something and you can see the whole audience get intense, rethink that or adapt. Or if you see something, you can, as you're watching, you can see everybody's. Or if someone asks a hostile question, listen. That's a very good clue that something's going on, and you want to be able to adapt to that. So, adapting to demographics. This is age, gender, and often I'm asked, well, Dr. Warren, why does that matter? My answer is, do you talk the same way to your friends as you do to your parents? Do you talk the same way to children as you do to grandparents? Do you talk the same way to your boss as you do your honey? All right? No, we use very different language and we talk in very different terms. So we want to know who we're talking to as much as possible. And for example, if I'm going to give a eulogy at a funeral, okay, I'm going to be talking in a different way, which leads us into the next example. Adapting to situations. A toast at a wedding is going to be very different than a eulogy at a funeral. Speaking to a group of engineers, as they call themselves, last year I was speaking at a technology conference, yeah, they want to hear a lot more detail and a lot more focus, okay, line by line. Whereas if I'm presenting to a group of presidents, they're going to want more big pictures. Okay, so these are just some examples that you want to be able to adapt to. But the most important thing is use words, terms, and topics familiar to others, or familiar to them, meaning your audience. All right, your assignment for the next 2 days, you want to try each one of these separately. But when you're going to go into a meeting or meet with friends and talk to anyone, persuade them to pay attention and try to find out what's most important for them, right? And then focus on what you want them to do, believe, or know differently. And again, adapting while you're listening and beforehand, looking at demographics and situations. And this is really important because it can make a big difference in how well you relate to, or your audience relates to you. In conclusion, in this session, we've talked about relating to your audience and preparing to relate to your audience. We've talked about persuading them to pay attention, knowing what's most important for them, being audience-centered so you can succeed, adapting before and during to demographics and situations, and using the words, terms, and ideas that are most important to your audience. So this is super important because it's going to make a big difference in that impact and in your relation to your audience. So relate to your audience, make a bigger impact.